Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar around Azure Compute, Achieving Continuous Cost Optimization. Here with me we have Yarden Kesari, Elastigroup Product Manager, and I am Jonathan Cohen, Head of Product Strategy here at Spot by NetApp. In today's webinar, we will deep dive on how Elastigroup can help you drive continuous cost optimization for both stateless and stateful workloads. We will provide you a quick demonstration of the product itself, what you can do with it, what is the value of it. And finally, we will have some time for open discussion, Yarden and me, and also some time for Q&A from your side. So feel free to send some questions on the box of the Q&A. In any case that we will not have enough time to review all the questions, of course, we will follow up with answers after the session itself. So thank you very much for joining, and let's kick it off. Yarden, providing you the microphone to start and kick it off.
Great. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Hello, good morning. My name is Yarden Kesari. I'm Elastigroup Product Manager here at Spot by NetApp. So in this webinar, we're going to cover some basics on how to continuously optimize your compute workloads. Actually, we're going to talk about both stateless and stateful workloads using Spot VMs. And in the title, you can see that the main goal is to achieve up to 90% savings out of your infrastructure costs. So let's deep dive to see how we can actually accomplish that. So before actually jumping into the actual solution, let's first figure out what are the customer's pain points. For that, I'd like to take a minute or so to talk about Azure's pricing models. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but let's just basically cover those. So basically, Azure has three pricing models. They have the pay-as-you-go model, the reserved capacity, and the Spot VM models. The first one, the pay-as-you-go one, is probably the most simple one to understand, but it's quite the most expensive one. So in this method, you're actually paying for the amount of time that you're using the VM. You're paying the full VM price. So from the second it starts, you're paying the full VM price without any discounts, without any commitments involved whatsoever. In the second one, the reserved capacity one, you're actually getting an average of, let's say, 45, 50% discount out of the pay-as-you-go pricing. In exchange, you do commit to use a specific VM type, for a period of 1 or 3 years ahead. Complex method, we'll cover that in a second. And the last but not least, that's the most potential savings cost. It's actually the Spot VM one. So using Spot VM means you can leverage Azure's spare compute capacity and can achieve discounts of up to 90% less of the on-demand price. Very, very much potential savings, but again, has its own disadvantage, which we'll cover in a second. So both Spot VM and reservation, again, has their own disadvantage and that you will need to consider. Let's jump to the next slide to see exactly what those are. So when you wish to exercise some kind of a discounted price offering, whenever you run your compute workloads, you need to take into consideration a couple of the following facts. So reservation, as I told before, obligates you to commit to a specific time period for using selected VM types. You need actually to plan your compute needs ahead, which can be challenging if you don't know what those will exactly be. This can potentially cause lots of waste resources, which we are seeing a lot of in our customers that are using us, and negative ROI, of course, during the process. And moving to Spot VM, the main issue in this method is, in fact, that by design, you have no SLA of the Spot VM availability. That means that the VM can be taken away by the cloud vendor at any given time, but they are giving us roughly 30 seconds of notice. The termination decision is based primarily on the VM location, its operating system, its type, its size, and of course the time of the day. You can see, like we've talked about, that Spot VM is the most cost-effective pricing model here, but fails to allow the SLA for availability. So many customers not feel that comfortable of running their mission critical and production workloads on top of spot VMs. That's where we come into the picture. You can see here that we, Spot by NetApp company, formerly known as Spot.io, Spotinst, if you remember, helps out above 1,500 companies, starting from startups to global enterprise. We help them achieve continuously optimization and automation for their cloud workloads. What we provide to those customers is the ability, tools, products to help them best utilize their infrastructure and reduce their overall cloud cost along the way. Just before jumping into the next slide, I want to say that those customers help us to create ourselves a massive data set of the customer's usage statistics, which can help us to do the product even in a better situation than what we are doing today. So jumping into the next slide, we can actually see a couple of interesting statistics gathered along in this year alone. So in this year alone, we have had almost 160 million running our instances, above 10.6 billion CPU hours, and over 10,000 spot markets. That's a lot of data. So following next, you will see how this data actually help us to advance the spot prediction that we are offering in our products, and especially in a one simple product and more sophisticated one, which I would like to introduce here, if you don't familiar with. Elastigroup. So Elastigroup is our solution for running production mission critical workloads on top of spot VMs, but we do offer SLA. We guarantee SLA, what Azure doesn't do. When you run your workloads leveraging spot VMs without Elastigroup, that's on the left, whether it's by doing your self-solution, managed scale set, doesn't really matter which one, you have no guarantee that the workloads actually remain in their desired capacity. So once Spot is being taken away by the cloud vendor, there are no automatic procedure to bring the capacity back to the desired one, or to have a process that proactively replace the VM before it even terminates. That's where we come in. With Elastigroup, you can make sure you will get the required capacity all times. We are using, we will see that in a second, the predictive models to replace a VM that is likely to get terminated, or we are actually fall back to an on-demand in case there are no spot capacity available. But let's see how Elastigroup really works to have this required capacity achieved all times. So we are seeing here that Elastigroup is running on workloads that are running spot VMs. Regular run. Afterwards, Elastigroup can predict an interruption of specific spot VM type inside of some spot marketing. And once this prediction is up and running, Elastigroup takes a proactive approach of scaling up a new spot VM or an on-demand if that spot VM is not available or the spot market is not available at the moment. And it proactively scales out a new spot VM, which in this fourth, we are seeing that it drains out the old spot VM out of these workloads and move it to the new VM as well. What you can see here on number 5 is that if we are actually having an on-demand that is up and running, we can guarantee that once the spot VM is back available, we will revert back to the spot VM to ensure the continuous optimization that Elastigroup has to offer. Some cool stuff. So Elastigroup is actually a very, let's say, a perfect solution for stateless lower workloads. We can see that the customers that are using, I don't know, any kind of VMSS, load balancing application, a big data environment, CI/CD runners, machine learning environments, and so on and so forth are pretty much perfect match to choose Elastigroup as their cloud optimization engine because the majority of those are replacement tolerant, and most of the times they don't even contain stateful capabilities as well. touching stateful, I'd like to say that on the past couple of years, Elastigroup for AWS provides end-to-end support for stateful workloads, which means workloads that require to have their IP and storage persistency all times are being managed by Elastigroup without any interruption. So meaning that such application like Elasticsearch, single DB instances, SonarQube clusters, and so on are perfect match for those. As we keep on seeing those stateful use cases to be very popular in AWS side, we continue, and actually in the past couple of months, we've seen that those use cases are very, very popular on the Azure side as well. That's where we decided to go into the development of a new product to support those kind of features. So introducing stateful node support. That's a new product that we are launching today to handle the stateful workloads of Azure. So before diving into the stateful node, let's again figure out that stateful means keeping your IP and keeping your storage component the same throughout the application lifetime. You can figure out from what we've talked about that keeping spot VM, which is highly replaceable instance with stateful capabilities, is pretty much a difficult task to keep both in a highly availability manner and to support stateful capabilities. Those can be really, really hard to achieve, but stateful node does the trick here. You can see in the stateful node, this is very suitable for running stateful workloads that match a single VM use case, such as single DB instances, machine learning, training models nodes, personal dev machines, which we will cover in a second, and many more use cases that are required to have a single instance use case and can run. You can see in the picture here that they can run either on single availability zone or multi-availability zones. That's only relevant for what are the availability zones you can configure when you create a stateful node. That's not an architecture which you will run a couple of stateful nodes, but you can have a couple of availability zones to select where to launch your instance in. That's increased the high availability of the solution as well. But why to use stateful node from the get-go? You can use, I think we will cover that in a second, but you can use whatever you want. You can use the pay-as-you-go, but here you actually reach out to 90% of your infrastructure cost while running stateful workloads that require your root or your data, your public or your private IP to be persist throughout the application lifetime. Interesting point here that we see that this approach is very popular among customers that are using the lift and shift architecture and do not want to change anything in their running computer. They just want to take their compute from Azure, import it to some kind of a stateful solution, which is a cheap solution, and they can just import those into stateful node. We will provide them with the higher infrastructure savings with SLA availability guaranteed. So on top of having stateful node, you actually gain Elastigroup's top features when you're using stateful node. We've providing the customer with multiple VM types and site selection, easy and simplified management platform, which we will see in a second, advanced scheduling to pause your instance in case during off hours in case you want it to be shut down, automatically bring it back online during on hours, fast import process. And I think the most important thing that there is to mention here is the automatically fall back to an on-demand where there is no spot capacity and the revert back to spot when the capacity is back online. All right. So going into the storage persistency, actually the persistency of the data volume can be done in multiple ways. We are mentioning two of those here. One is having the same data volume. That's the persistency of the data itself. Same data volumes, that's only relevant actually when you're using a single AZ architecture. You can use same data volumes when you replace the spot VM whenever you want. And you can configure multiple availability zones, but in that specific use case, you'll need to have the snapshot mechanism that creates new volumes out of the source snapshots. You can see that we are providing the same solution, which is really great because we don't have that capability in other cloud platforms for the OS persistency as well. So we have the OS persistency, disk persistency to be or to use the same disk, single AZ architecture, or to use the snapshot in multi. Okay, here we are going to cover, I think it's one of the most powerful examples that demonstrate the stateful node feature, to be honest, is when you're using personal dev machine in your company. In this example, you can see that each developer has its own stateful node with advanced scheduling to get the machine up only during on hours. You have double of the savings because you keep it down during off hours, and while it's up, you're using Spot. So higher savings on this matter. We've seen this as a very popular approach to deploy thousands of dev machines with the minimal cost consideration. Following up the stateful node, that's only relevant for single use cases, right? So single DB instances, single IIS instances, whatever application that requires stateful capabilities. But what happens if you have the cluster that needs to be in a stateful capabilities? So coming up next, we're going to launch stateful group, which means we are going to leverage the stateful node capabilities, and by gathering a couple of stateful node objects that operates as a single logical unit. Follow up to see what happens next on this one. You can see that here we are able to create or import a stateful node. In this example, actually, we're going to create, you can see that how we can going to create a stateful node solution. On this one, very simplified, easy platform, UI-based. You can also do that using an API, using Terraform, or whatever tool that you're using. And you can also lift and shift your architecture to the cloud from Azure, to the stateful node by just selecting what VM you want and then import it into our platform seamlessly without any interruptions. I'll stop here for a second, and I do want to show you my screen, just a second, to go over the platform itself. Okay, Jonathan, let me know if that you're seeing. All right. Yeah, great. So we can see here a couple. I do want to indicate a couple of things on this platform. So we are seeing Elastigroup's dashboard. That's a couple of monitor statistics that we are covering on the groups that we are managing. That's relevant for both groups and for the stateful nodes that we will cover in a second. You can see how many on-demand hours you have, how many spot hours you have. What really interests here is you can see on the green what are the potential costs, meaning what would you have paid if you would run without Elastigroup, and the actual cost that you can see is a lot less from the actual potential. So this is really cool to see the differences between the two. You will see also CPU count breakdown by the VM size, and you can see actually how many spots we are running here, which is not a lot because this is a demo environment. But you can see that we have lots of savings, up to 70% actually, in this account alone. Going through the stateful groups, I've prepared an application group here, which is a demo group, that you can see giving us an overview. You can see an overview of the group. It has 6 VM running, 76% savings on this group alone. That's the saving comparing to the on-demand pricing of those instances. You can see that we are allowing in the same group to configure multiple VM types and sizes for better spot market availability. You can see the group's names, of course, what is the image that the group is based on, creation time, the events of the group, of the scale down and the scale up processes in the group itself. You can also see the network capabilities as well, the VMs itself, what are the VMs, each VM's link into the Azure portal, so you can have a look in there as well. Their network properties, here we are connecting the group into a load balancer. So this is one of when I talked about the stateless solution, that's one of the most popular use cases to connect the group to some kind of a load balancing application. So this is the load balancer registration, where what is the time the VM was created. Interesting thing here is that we can see a deployment. We had a deployment inside the group where you want to deploy a new code, new version to those instances. You actually run a deployment. You can do that in this button. It runs a deployment. You can see that the VMs, it's a blue-green deployment. So we are actually having, in this specific deployment, we had 3 batches. Each batch contained 2 instances. And the old VM was replaced by the new VM. So we had, in the first batch, two new VMs were up, got their health check running, and then removed the old ones, then got back to the second phase, and so on and so forth. You can see the logs for that group as well to see where we had an auto-scaling event, what is the scale-down procedures that happened here, and just a quick peek to the stateful node solution. We are seeing stateless groups, fine. Those are groups with stateless capabilities. The stateful node one, that's the ones that we discussed to have stateful capabilities on single instance use cases. So here we are seeing a couple of VMs here. One VM that we are going to show here has 70% savings while it was running. You can see the VM name again linked to the Azure portal to see more details. The configurable availability zones and the configurable VM sizes, which we configured. We can have also an on-demand VM size. So in case the VM is not available, it will fall, the spot is not available, it will fall back to the types that we configured here. The persisted resources, that's the heart of the stateful, yeah? So we are having both network and storage persistency on this one, where we can see what are the network persistency, what are those details, and that we are persisting both the OS and the data disks as well. Again, like any other solution, we can see the logs of this specific stateful node, and to do a couple of actions like recycle, which means to pause the VM, to take it down, but still persist its resources, and to resume it afterwards. And you can also do a recycle. So if you are configuring some kind of a new changes inside this node, you can actually do the recycle part, and it will automatically apply. That's it from my end. Jonathan?
Yeah, so first of all, Yarden, thank you very much for a great presentation, and thank you for the quick peek on stateless groups and stateful nodes. One of the things that I saw here, I want to share with the audience, is that stateless groups are usually workloads that are connected to a load balancer or an application gateway. Usually it's kind of things that you will be importing from a skill set, right? And when it comes to a stateful workload, it will be usually around the things that you have mentioned, things like IIS applications and anything that requires persisting the IP or the data, whether it is on the root volume or the data volume. Now, this is very nice to see. Now, I do want to go to a stateful nodes for a sec, just to see something that I really like to see. If you can go to the stateful nodes for a second. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so if we go to the demo VM that you created,
Yep.
we can see here that you have sorry, it's okay to have it here as well, but we could see that you have 2 availability zones configured in this node. Now, we are talking on a standalone node. What does it mean to configure 2 availability zones or 3 of them?
Yeah, so
what is the...
Yeah, we're configuring here 3 availability zones, which means the VM itself isn't running on 3 availability zones, right? It's only running on 1. But in this case, it says that if you don't have any availability, or it actually enlarged the availability of your node, which means it can be launched in either the first, the second, or the third availability zones, which configured here. That's actually adding to the availability of that solution by configuring multiple availability zones. In this situation, it doesn't matter if we are running today on the first availability zone and then we are moving to the second one. We will keep the network and the storage persistency to be stateful all times. It doesn't matter from which zone you're currently running.
Got it. So what we are doing here is that because of the fact that storage is attached into a specific data center or a specific availability zone, if we want to expand the ways of running on spot VM, even if a specific AZ is not available, we can run the same VM on another AZ, and because the disk itself is not available on this AZ, we are snapshotting it and attaching a new VM with a new disk that is based on the disk on the other side. Is that correct?
Absolutely, you're correct.
Okay.
Where you
so this
move
is a
from
very
one
good
to another. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you, like you said, when you move from one availability zone to another, and you have your data persistency available, we are taking the snapshot and creating new disks for you in the process without you even noticing.
Nice. Now, if I want to persist, like if my application does not require really any storage persistency and I don't want to handle all these snapshots, etc., but I need IP persistency, is this available? Can I just configure only IP and not storage, or only storage and not IP? Is this possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, you can see in the persistent resources that we are enabling 3 options. One option is to have the OS disk persistency. That can be configured alone or with the other. Second is to have the data disk persistency, and the third one is the network. Network persistency, on the other hand, contains both the public and the private IP resources for that specific node. So you can configure either network alone, data disk alone, OS disk alone persistency, or you can configure all of those together.
Got it. Okay. Now, everything is controlled by the UI, by API. How does it actually work?
Yeah, you can control all of what we are seeing in the stateful node either by the API of the stateful node or by the UI, of course, and of course by Terraform, all of the tools that connect to the API. So we don't obligate to use a specific method. You can do it either through the backend development or through the UI itself.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's have like a quick open discussion, and then we will review some of the Q&A here as well. You know, you've mentioned during the presentation that Elastigroup Stateful has been supported on Elastigroup AWS for many years now. Why Azure, and why now? And what is special about the solution for Azure, if there's anything special or it's the same of AWS? Spill some light on that.
Yeah, actually in AWS, well, the company started while it was providing the AWS solution, Elastigroup solution for AWS for many years now. During the couple of years, we also developed the Azure solution for Elastigroup. And lately we've talked to many prospects, to many customers about having stateful capabilities inside our platform. This is something that was very, very necessary on their end. So we've started to think about how can we ensure running the stateful workloads on top of spot VMs and ensure SLA during the process. Then we've decided to go to the stateful node solution, which we've presented.
Got it. And you said that customers has been raising this need for a feature to run their workloads, their stateful workloads, which is pretty sensitive, right? Running them on spot VMs, which by design are designed to be taken away at any moment. And they trust us to make sure that we are like persisting their data, persisting their IP, just like we do for years now on AWS. And I'm asking, why not going ahead and buy some commitments for a stateful workload? Like if you have a stateful workload, why not just like commit to 3 years, pay 45, 50% less, and that's it? Why do I need this kind of solution?
Yeah, that's interesting because we know that you can buy the commitments, forget about it, and then use the workloads for 1 year, 3 years, no problem. What happens if you have a project that is being canceled after 2 months? Then you are stuck with those commitments. You're actually obligated to buy those commitments in the get-go and not really use those during the process. Given the fact that also the commitments are less, they are having less savings during the process, spot VMs actually have up to 90%. So we do want to have both savings and the agility to use multiple VMs, not to commit just one type, one size on the process. So I think that's pretty much the better solution, and just from buying. But if you know your commitments for 1 year or 3 years ahead, go ahead, buy the commitments. That's pretty reasonable. But here we are offering some kind of an architecture that provides the SLA while having higher savings in the process.
Got it. So just to see that I understand, what you're saying is that, first of all, the savings of RIs are lower than spot VMs, and that's correct. You can have up to 70% of savings by RIs, but usually the average is around 45, 50, something like that. While in spot VMs, we see in our customers that they can save sometimes 80, 85, 86, 89, and up to 90. And again, as you said, it really depends on if you know what will happen in the next year. With Elastigroup, you have the flexibility, and Elastigroup always choose the right VM right now to run on, based on the varying pricing. I saw that there was a question if the pricing is changing for spot VMs. So I would just say, yeah, it changes based on the demand. And Elastigroup, what it does is always takes the best one based on the needs. So this is something that you can't have the flexibility when you purchase commitments, right? So this is one of the things.
Yeah. I think Elastigroup by design is allowing the flexibility for all options. So you can have the flexibility of, hey, my application is having higher request or higher securitization. I will expand it. I will decrease it. I can use several types as I wish. Each decision, like you said, each decision during scale up, during replacement of an instance, for example, is based wisely according to the score of the market, that if it has a high availability and we can launch instances there, we will go there. And of course, the ones that is more cost efficient to the customer. So both cost efficiency and SLA guaranteed, I think those with the agility of the product are a win for the customer.
That's great. And you can update your configuration whenever you want without any commitment. You are not buying a specific VM size. If your application grows up, you don't need to cancel this commitment and buy another one and use the commitment to something else. This is a very dynamic solution that is based on your workloads and optimize your costs. So this is great. Now, one of the things that I do want to talk with you is in what cases Elastigroup replaces instances? Because we talked about the fact that usually the stateful workloads are pretty sensitive, right? Now, we talked about Elastigroup that always like replace instances. So the question is, what is the right workload to run on stateful workloads, on Elastigroup stateful, sorry, and how much replacement should I expect to have as part of the solution?
So if we divide this into two, so you said what are the right, when are we going to use the stateful and when are we going to use the stateless? That's probably the use case here. So
right.
Stateful also is dividing into two. So you can say, okay, in stateless, like we said, load balancing application, some VMSS solutions, each one of the application that is natively stateless, and production, by the way, production mission critical workloads with the load balancing solution are pretty great to use Elastigroup. But if you have the need to run any kind of a single instance use case with persistency of the storage and the AP, or you need to have later on to run your cluster with persistency, then you can use the stateful solution, the stateful node for now. We see many customers using the stateful node solution for both their development machine, their dev machine in general, their dev and test environment, because this is a single instance use case. So application that does not tolerate any replacements and runs on production with a single instance use case, it's not applicable to those. But a single instance use case that is tolerant to replacing, definitely go to stateful node. And also, if you have production application, not necessarily dev or test one, that is okay with replacing and has a couple of instances in the group, go ahead and use Elastigroup for that solution, for that agile solution. I think most use cases are being covered for both Elastigroup and for stateful node. So I don't think we will have a use case where, except for single instance use case that does not tolerate any replacement, don't go to a stateful node. On the other hand, everything can go to stateful node, and everything in production and in dev test can definitely go to Elastigroup.
By the way, we as Spot are running our Elasticsearch database on Elastigroup stateful, right? So as long as your architecture allows high availability and changing instances, that's okay. If you have a single architecture VM and you don't want it to be restarted, just don't use Elastigroup stateful. But for all other use cases, or in the case that you have a dev environment, test environment, pre-prod environment that you want to have a single VM running, that's okay as long as you can tolerate that. But eventually we're talking here about 90% savings, right? So let's make the change to make sure that we are saving enough.
Actually, you talked about something really interesting. Production Spot doesn't only run its Elastigroup it's Elasticsearch on stateless. It runs the entire product. Entire company runs using Spot products, using Elastigroup to be specific. So this is very, very interesting.
Yeah. And we have many other customers that are utilizing Elasticsearch on Elastigroup as well. So this is just like a note. So, I would love to hear for our audience, Yarden is an Elastigroup product manager in the last, 2 years. Tell me some secrets from the last, or secrets of behind of the scenes of developing this feature, because I know how complicated this feature is. So tell me something that you want to share with the audience about this feature. What is the most challenging thing, let's say?
Well, we had many challenges during the development of the stateful node feature, and later on the stateful group. I think one of those specifically was to ensure that the data and all of the resources for the customer will not get affected, and we will maintain those in the most seamlessly way. So by design, inside the product itself, we build some kind of a defense mechanism to ensure that the data is not harmed. We are keeping the snapshots of every step of the way and restoring those whenever it's needed, and keeping timestamp according to each action the customer is taking. So overall, I think defense mechanism and inside the developing process, and of course testing it in the QA, and all of those, of course running in our production first, make that very challenging on the one hand, but I think made us deliver a better product to our customers on the other one.
Sounds good. And it is a continuity of something like 4 years of Elastigroup stateful of AWS, with all of the experience that we have from there, with hundreds of customers that are leveraging Elastigroup stateful. So everything that comes from Elastigroup stateful for AWS now is part of Elastigroup for Azure, with all of the experience and all of the challenges that we already had there. Happy customers on AWS, and very soon happy customers on Azure as well. So we are now in the, I saw the blog post of a private preview a few weeks ago. Where we are standing right now, are we on early access? Are we providing early access?
Yeah, so stateful node is out. For those who want to start using those in their environment, can definitely, that's the one, can definitely contact us to start using those today. I think this will be sent also to the customers that are joining this call, and we will publish that as well. For customers who are wanting to use those as private preview, can definitely talk to us, and we will have a session with them and expose them to this feature. And we'll definitely be happy to jump on any customer call, because like I said before, I don't think there is any solution for the customer that we cannot implement inside our platform.
Sounds good. Okay, what's next for Elastigroup Azure?
Well, we have lots of things coming up next. I think, first of all, like I said, doing the stateful group feature, that's a whole lot of work that we are building around the stateful node capabilities and expanding those to stateful groups. But we want to take a next step further into even more simplifying the experience the customer is having in Elastigroup, to have a better market statistic on the dashboard itself, and to have a granular view for the scoring of each market that is being configured in the group. I think great things are coming up to Elastigroup in general, and Elastigroup for Azure in more specific ways.
Good to hear that. Let's go over for a few Q&As from the audience. I can see here there was a question around price changing. So as I mentioned before, spot VM prices are changing based on the demand, but for what we've seen, the change is not dramatic. Like, it can change from time to time. Azure provides the ability to see the prices on their webpage. This is something you can go ahead and see the spot VM pricing, and it is being updated. And of course, as Yarden shared, this is something that our platform, Elastigroup, continuously monitors the pricing and availability, and make sure to choose the right VM right now from both cost and availability perspective. Let's see what else. What is the pricing model for stateful node or Elastigroup? Is there any differences between the prices of Elastigroup, stateful node, and what is the pricing model?
Yeah, I think pricing model actually demonstrate our customer obsession, because we don't get anything if the customer is not saving their costs. The pricing model is actually a fraction of the customer's savings. So if the customer doesn't save anything, we're not getting anything from him using our platform. Same pricing model will be for stateful node and for the entire stateful solution. So you can see that we have higher savings. That's our job, to make the customer save his compute costs. So that's the way we charge for it. No licensing, no commitments, only a fraction of the savings.
Okay, I think we are good. Of course, all the other questions will be answered offline, and we will make sure to follow up with everyone that was here and had additional questions. Yarden, I want to thank you very much. Personally, I want to say I know you since when? 2010, something like that?
Let's not expose on this call.
It is a true pleasure to work with you, and I'm very honored to have you as Elastigroup product manager to lead one of our core products. Guys, you have here the email of Yarden Kesari, the product manager of Elastigroup. Feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact him for any questions that you have. And we will, of course, follow up with everything. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your time, guys. And thank you for joining. Thanks.